We used to love you. Those were the words it spoke, not in English, but in the hybrid language we'd developed over 50 years. We used to love you. Past tense. It was crying as it drew in the dirt, massive tears streaming down its face, hands trembling. It drew humans from 1,000 years ago, small groups living in harmony with the land, showing respect, taking only what they needed. Then it drew humans today, consuming, destroying, killing everything, including themselves. And between those two drawings, it made a gesture I'd never seen before, a movement like tearing something in half, breaking, shattering. We watched you become monsters, it said through our shared symbols. We watched you forget what you were, and now we watch you die, and we mourn, because once, long ago, we loved you like brothers. My name is William Chen. I'm 74 years old. I'm a retired anthropology professor, and I've been meeting with a Sasquatch elder named Old Walker since 1973. 51 years of regular contact, thousands of hours of communication, and 3 months ago, it finally told me the truth, the complete truth, about its people's relationship with humanity, about what they've observed over a millennium, about why they're preparing to watch us destroy ourselves, and what it confessed about us, about what we've become, is more terrifying than any horror story. Because it's true, all of it. This began in July 1973. I was 23, fresh out of grad school with a master's in anthropology, doing field work with indigenous communities in the Pacific Northwest. An elder named Joseph took me aside. You want to learn the old ways? There are older teachers than me, much older, if you're brave, if you're respectful. Who? I asked. The ancient ones, the forest people, the ones who were here first. Joseph took me deep into the North Cascades, 3 days hike, to a valley on no map. He performed a ceremony, burning sage, speaking Lummi, leaving offerings. If they accept you, they'll contact you. If not, we never speak of this again. He left me there, alone, 3 days to wait. On the second night, my camp was rearranged while I slept. Improved. On the third morning, a gift, an exquisitely carved wooden bear on my field notebook. That afternoon it appeared, gradually, at the clearing's edge, 30 yards away, 9 feet tall, covered in gray-brown hair, face remarkably human, eyes, ancient eyes, holding more intelligence than most humans I'd known. We stared for 5 minutes. Then it sat, cross-legged, gestured, sit, join me, we'll talk. That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, we developed basic communication, gestures, drawings, objects used symbolically. A pidgin language emerged. I learned he was male, ancient, over 100 years old, a knowledge keeper, a historian for his people. I called him Old Walker. That summer ended. I returned to academic life, but I came back every summer for 51 years, meeting Old Walker, learning, listening, building trust. The first decade, we focused on basics. His people lived in small family groups, never more than 5 or 6, spread across vast territories. They took only what they needed, left no permanent mark. They had culture, songs, stories, knowledge passed down. They understood the forest in ways that shamed my education. The second decade, Old Walker started sharing history, and that's when I learned the truth. His people had been here for hundreds of thousands of years, long before modern humans arrived. A different branch of the hominid tree. They'd watched us spread and made a choice: hide, retreat, let the newcomers have the land. But in the beginning, the first centuries, there had been contact, respect between species. Old Walker's people had taught early humans how to live in these forests. The indigenous people's traditional knowledge. Much came originally from Sasquatch teachers. They'd loved us then, loved us like younger siblings. We were clever, adaptable, creative. We were family. Then something changed. Old Walker couldn't pinpoint exactly when. Maybe 500 years ago, maybe 1,000. But humans began to shift, to disconnect, to forget. We stopped listening to the land, stopped taking only what we needed, started accumulating, competing, conquering. The Europeans who arrived brought it in extreme form, but the seeds had been planted earlier. Something in human nature, or human culture, had turned dark. Old Walker's people watched it happen, watched communities that had lived sustainably for generations suddenly start overhunting, watched conflicts over resources intensify, watched respect for the land erode into exploitation, and they pulled back, hid deeper, because they recognized the pattern. They'd seen it before in other species: the overconsumption, the violence, the disconnection from natural limits. It always ended the same way: collapse. For the third decade of our meetings, Old Walker shared observations, what his people had witnessed over a millennium of watching humanity, and it was devastating. We'd recorded it all, he said. Every generation of walkers kept records, not written. Their species didn't write, but memorized, passed down through intensive teaching, like an oral library spanning 1,000 years. They'd watched humans go from small groups of a few hundred to millions, then billions. They'd watched forests that had stood for millennia cleared in decades, rivers that had run clean for eons poisoned in years, animals that had thrived for countless generations driven to extinction in a single human lifetime. But the physical destruction wasn't what disturbed them most. It was the psychological change, the spiritual decay. Early humans, Old Walker said, had understood connection. They'd known they were part of something larger. They'd felt kinship with the earth, with other species, with each other. They'd had wisdom. Modern humans, especially in the last few centuries, had lost that. We'd become isolated, disconnected. We saw ourselves as separate from nature, superior to it, entitled to dominate it. We'd forgotten we were just one species among millions, dependent on the same air, water, soil as every other living thing. And that disconnection was killing us. Not quickly, but inevitably. We were severing the very relationships that sustained life. The fourth decade, Old Walker's tone shifted, became urgent, grieving. His people weren't just observing anymore, they were preparing, because they'd seen enough. The trajectory was clear. Humanity was entering terminal decline, not immediate collapse. That would take decades still. But the cascade had begun. The climate was destabilizing. Ecosystems were fracturing. Species were vanishing at rates not seen since mass extinctions. And humans were accelerating rather than correcting. His people were moving to the most remote areas, reducing even further their already minimal footprint, preparing to wait out what was coming. They'd survive. They'd endured ice ages. They'd outlasted extinctions. They'd weather humanity's collapse. But they grieved because they remembered when we were different, when we were kin. The fifth decade, these last 11 years, has been the hardest. Old Walker is old, even by his people's standards. Over 120 years, moving slower, sleeping more. He knows his time is short, and he's determined to pass on everything before he goes. Last summer, 2023, he started sharing the final teachings, the complete assessment, what his people had concluded after a millennium of observation. And 3 months ago, September 2024, he gave me the full confession. Everything his people believed about humanity, everything they'd kept secret, everything they'd been too kind or too diplomatic to say before. We sat by the creek where we'd met hundreds of times. Old Walker was visibly weakened, his movements careful, his breathing labored, but his mind was sharp, his memories intact. He drew in the dirt, our usual method, but this time the drawings were different, more detailed, more extensive, a complete history. He drew humans from 1,000 years ago, small groups, living in balance, taking only what they needed, showing respect for other life, connected to the land, connected to each other. And next to these drawings he made a symbol I'd learned meant good, right, how it should be. Then he drew humans from 500 years ago, larger groups, beginning to accumulate, starting to dominate, forests clearing, animals declining, and the symbol shifted. Warning, concern, wrong path. Then humans from 200 years ago, massive expansion, industrial revolution, cities sprawling, nature retreating, and the symbol, danger, crisis, very wrong. Then humans today, 8 billion, climate crisis, mass extinction, oceans dying, forests gone, and the symbol, terminal, dying, too late. I watched him draw, my heart sinking. You think we're beyond saving? He looked at me with those ancient eyes and made a gesture, not beyond saving, beyond choosing to save ourselves. The knowledge existed, the technology existed, the solutions existed, but we wouldn't implement them because we'd lost the wisdom to value long-term survival over short-term comfort. Then he drew more. And this is where it became truly terrifying. He drew what his people had observed in human behavior over the centuries, patterns that had intensified over time. 1. Addiction to growth. We couldn't stop expanding, consuming, accumulating, even when it destroyed us, like an organism that couldn't stop eating until it burst. 2. Worship of competition. We'd made conflict our primary organizing principle. Nations competed, corporations competed, individuals competed. We'd forgotten how to cooperate at the scale necessary for survival. 3. Short-term thinking. We could only see immediate benefits and costs. Couldn't plan beyond a few years, couldn't value the long term. Sacrificed our children's future for today's convenience. 4. Disconnection from consequence. We'd created systems so complex we couldn't see how our choices affected the world, bought products without knowing what they destroyed, made decisions without understanding their impact, lived in bubbles that insulated us from reality. 5. Belief in supremacy. We thought we were special, above natural law, exempt from ecological limits, that technology would save us, that we'd always find a solution, that the rules didn't apply to us. And 6, the most damning conscious choice. We knew all this. Scientists had been warning for decades. Evidence was overwhelming. But we chose comfort over survival, convenience over our children, profit over the planet. We were choosing extinction consciously. Old Walker drew all this slowly, carefully, making sure I understood. Then he sat back and made a sound I'd only heard a few times in 50 years, the sound of deep grief, of mourning something beloved that was dying. We used to love you, he communicated through our shared language. Your early ancestors, they were wise, humble, connected. They learned from us. We learned from them. We were kin, different species, but family. He pointed to the drawings of humans from 1,000 years ago. Those humans understood. They knew they were part of something larger. They respected other life. They took only what they needed. They lived in balance. Then he pointed to the drawing of humans today. These humans are different, not in body, in spirit. They've forgotten. They think they own the world. They see other life as resources, not kin. They consume without limit. They destroy without thought. His hands were shaking as he drew the next image. Humans destroying the forest, poisoning the rivers, heating the atmosphere, driving species extinct. And next to it, he drew the consequences: crop failures, water scarcity, mass death, societal collapse. We've been watching this develop for centuries, he signed, slowly at first, then faster, now exponentially, and we know how it ends, because we've seen this pattern before, not in humans, in other species. The dynamics are the same. Overgrowth, overconsumption, system collapse, die-off. Can we stop it? I asked desperately. Is there still time? He drew a timeline, showed me where we were, already past several tipping points, showed me what would need to change, everything about how we lived, showed me how fast we'd need to act, immediately, globally, completely. Then he made that gesture, impossible. Not because the solutions don't exist, because humans won't choose them. We'd rather die comfortable than live sustainably. But why, I asked. Why won't we change? And this is where the confession became truly terrifying, where old Walker revealed what his people really thought about us after a millennium of observation. He drew a human brain, then divided it. One half, ancient, the part that evolved over millions of years, designed for small groups, direct experience, immediate threats, face-to-face connection. The other half, modern, the part that created civilization, technology, abstraction, global systems. The ancient half, he showed, still worked, still understood survival, still felt connection to the earth, still wanted to live sustainably. But the modern half had overridden it, created systems the ancient brain couldn't comprehend, produced threats the ancient brain couldn't perceive, built abstractions that felt less real than immediate comfort. We were essentially running modern civilization on hardware designed for the Stone Age. And the mismatch was fatal. We couldn't emotionally grasp exponential growth, couldn't viscerally feel planetary scale threats, couldn't overcome immediate desires for distant survival. Our brains weren't designed for the world we'd created, and we wouldn't evolve fast enough. Evolution worked over thousands of generations. We had maybe 2 or 3 generations before collapse. The math didn't work. So we're just doomed? I asked. Biologically incapable of saving ourselves? Old Walker paused, then drew something new. A split, most humans, following the path to collapse. But a few, a very few, remembering, reconnecting, living differently. Not trying to maintain the unsustainable modern world, but choosing to return to older, wiser ways. These few might survive, he signed, not by fighting the collapse, by accepting it, by letting go of the modern world and remembering how to live as your ancestors did. Connected, humble, sustainable. How many? I asked. How many might survive? He held up his hands, gestured, small, very small, maybe millions from billions, maybe less. Then he drew what would happen after. The collapse would take decades. Billions would die. Infrastructure would fail. Knowledge would be lost. Technology would disappear. Survivors would scatter into small groups. And slowly, over centuries, the earth would recover. And your people, I asked, what will you do? He drew Sasquatch, maybe 50 individuals remaining in North America, he'd told me before. They'd survive, move into the territories humans abandoned, thrive as human pressure vanished. And wait to see if the survivors would remember, would reconnect, would become again what their ancestors had been. And if they do, I asked, if humans remember how to live properly? For the first time in 51 years, Old Walker smiled, a real smile, sad but genuine. He drew 2 figures, human and Sasquatch, standing side by side, connected, kin. Then maybe, he signed, in a few centuries, we can love you again. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of it crushing, a millennium of observation, a millennium of hope slowly dying, a millennium of watching a species they'd loved forget who they were and destroy themselves. Finally, Old Walker stood, moved to me, and did something he'd never done before. He embraced me, this massive, ancient being, holding me like a father holds a dying son, and I felt him crying, felt tears falling onto my hair, felt the grief of a species watching another species commit suicide. I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry for what we've become. He held me tighter, then released, looked at me with those infinite eyes, and signed, tell them, tell your people, not to save them, it's too late for that, but so they know, so they understand what they lost, what they chose to destroy. Tell them we loved them once, and we grieve for what they became. Then he turned and walked into the forest. I haven't seen him since. I think he went away to die. His people do that, go alone into the deep wild when their time comes, leave no trace, return to the earth. And I'm left with this knowledge, this terrible, complete knowledge. A millennium of Sasquatch observation of humanity. The full assessment, the final verdict. We were loved once, by an elder species, by beings who remembered when we were wise. They watched us for 1,000 years, watched us grow, watched us change, watched us forget what we were, and they've concluded we're terminal, not because we can't change, but because we won't. Our brains aren't designed for the challenges we've created. Our culture has become toxic, our systems are self-destructive, and we're consciously choosing comfort over survival. The collapse is coming. Decades, not centuries, billions will die, civilization will fragment, knowledge will be lost. And a few survivors, those who can remember how to live the old ways, might persist. The Sasquatch will watch it happen. We'll grieve for us. We'll wait to see if the survivors can become again what their ancestors were. And maybe in a few centuries, there can be kinship again. That's the terrifying confession. Not that we're dying, we know that, but why we're dying, and what we lost, and that an elder species tried to teach us, tried to guide us, tried to love us, and we forgot them, dismissed them as myth, destroyed their forests, poisoned their rivers, and proved over a millennium that we were unworthy of their love. I'm 74 years old. I'm writing this because old Walker asked me to, not to save humanity, we won't save ourselves, but as a record, a testimony, a confession of our own. We were loved by Bigfoot for centuries, and we destroyed that love through what we became. That's the truth. That's the confession. That's what terrifies me every night. Not that we're dying, but that we deserved better and chose worse, and an elder species watched us make that choice for 1,000 years and wept for us